There's been a lot of discussion in recent years about the tension between former Toronto Raptors head coach Dwane Casey and current Raptors coach Nick Nurse. And following last night's game, Casey and Nick Nurse both threw shots at each other in the post-game press conference. So we'll discuss that as well as that Raptors-Pistons game where the Raptors got a big W. And we have a lot of injury updates to report on in this vid. So lots of stuff to break down. Without further ado, let's jump to the first topic of discussion. First thing we're taking a look at is Dwane Casey and Nick Nurse taking some subtle jabs at each other, taking some shots following last night's game versus the Pistons, Raptors-Pistons game. Now, since Dwane Casey left, he was coach of the year, he was fired by the Toronto Raptors, and to make matters worse for Dwane Casey, his assistant, a guy that was on the bench alongside with him, ended up taking his job, and then to add more fuel to the fire, the Toronto Raptors won the championship this season immediately after. Now, we also had Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green added to that team. It wasn't just the coaching change, and Marc Gasol, we can't forget him, added to the mix. It wasn't just the coaching change that led to the NBA championship, but a lot has been talked about the spite Dwane Casey has had for the Raptors following that whole situation, and Dwane Casey is without a doubt, I think it's tough to make an argument against the fact that he's at least the second best coach in franchise history, given a lot of the criticism thrown towards Nick Nurse. I'm sure there's some people that might say Dwane Casey's the best coach in franchise history. I'd put him up, rank him number 2. It's tough to go against a guy, Nick Nurse, who won a championship and had remarkable coaching performances last season as well as the 2020 bubble year, but I digress on that point. A lot has been talked about Dwane Casey making subtle jabs about the Pistons being a championship organization after they got fired. Obviously, the Raptors won the championship that season, and just his refusal to give any acknowledgement to Nick Nurse in his, Coach of the Year acceptance speech, those guys not really talking. Comments they've made in the media about each other as well, right? Have led a lot of Raptors fans, reporters, everyone to essentially take away that things aren't all sunshine and rainbows between Dwane Casey and Nick Nurse, even though they had a working relationship together for 4 or 5 seasons with the Toronto Raptors. And now, the Raptors also had a horrible record against Dwane Casey's Pistons, because the Pistons players came out and said it. It feels like their NBA championship when they go against the Toronto Raptors. Casey motivates them big time. Raptors fans are usually infiltrating the Pistons arena and stuff, so they're very motivated to fight against the Toronto Raptors. And this season, Raptors went 4-0, even though it's been a tumultuous year for Toronto, right? That Casey curse seems to have been listed at least for this season, but I digress on that point. Following last night's win, the 4th win for the Toronto Raptors this season against Detroit, Dwane Casey and Nick Nurse furthered their beef a little bit because, in the game, one thing Nick Nurse has been criticized for immensely online through even YouTube from us, everywhere, has been his rotations and his tendency to play star guys too many minutes, especially when he doesn't have to. And it was Josh Lundberg gave a decent take on it. Some serious dedication to keeping the Thad Young DNP coach's decision streak alive as Pascal Siakam remains on the court with 7.5 minutes left in the game. The Raptors are up by 24, right? Pascal was playing late into last night's game, getting some run down the stretch, even though the game was pretty well won for the entire season. But again, it's a big night for the Raptors in terms of this is a desperate W we need given the tough schedule we have to close out the year. So I guess Nick Nurse didn't want to leave anything to chance, but Dwane Casey made a subtle jab at, in the post game, basically saying that clearly Casey, while praising Pascal Siakam as an All-NBA caliber player, made a tongue-in-cheek joking reference to Siakam being in the game and getting his numbers up with 5 minutes left in a blowout. And then I don't think it was Pascal Siakam who he was playfully jabbing at, because Dwane Casey, love him or hate him, he's been very good about speaking about guys he coached in his Raptors tenure, about them being star players, whether it be Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam, guys that are on the team right now, Norman Powell, who just recently left, and obviously stars like Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan, legends in Toronto. He has high praise for those players still, and he was praising Pascal Siakam, but he was joking about the fact that he was on the court late, insinuating probably, and as the reporter sort of picked up, that Nick Nurse is playing the star players a little bit too much, looking a bit foolish with those rotations, and that's been really the biggest criticism regarding Nick Nurse, especially for the past couple of seasons. And then Nick Nurse fired back a little bit in the post-game presser when asked about what it's like coaching a developing team. He said, "I think that winning is a part of development. I think it's always difficult when you're not winning. It's not any fun. It's hard to watch, and it's hard to develop anything, to be honest with you." And, that's a little response there. Josh Loomberg's piecing things together as Dwane Casey, since he's left the Toronto Raptors, has been on a developing Pistons team where, to be fair, they have not developed a lot. And Nick Nurse has been criticized a little bit for his development, but he's saying, hey, would you rather us try to win, build that culture, not be like the tanking Sixers back in the day, or the current tanking Detroit Pistons, as we saw last night, right? When you're coaching a developing team and you're asking a player to lose, right, it's tough to really get anywhere. And I don't know if that's necessarily the philosophy Dwane Casey's been taking since he's went with Detroit. So obviously they tried to win. It's, there's nuance to it. They tried to win with Blake Griffin, that Andre Drummond sort of team. Reggie Jackson was on that roster. Blake Griffin just was given a max contract and then literally had one leg. So, I'm not giving Dwane Casey a bunch of the blame there, but Nurse seemed to be taking some shots in regards to saying, hey, if you're a bad team, you're consistently bad, it's hard to call you a good development coach, and especially where you don't really have too much to show for it. So, I don't know, some more subtle jabs, some more fuel added to the beef between Nick Nurse and Dwane Casey. It's been ongoing for years now at this point, and found it funny, especially against such an uninteresting game and stuff that, we had some fireworks following. I guess it's subtle fireworks, little sneak disses, Drake-esque rap battle roasts, at the end of this game. But let me know what you guys think about the Nick Nurse Dwane Casey beef. We have more stuff to dive into in this video, though. The next thing we're taking a look at is we have a Scotty Barnes, Gary Trent Jr., and Precious Achiuwa injury update. As, the Raptors, we really struggle when our top guys are not in the lineup, and especially Trent and Scotty Barnes, right? Key pieces to our starting lineup. We'll talk about the game, guys who stepped up against the Detroit Pistons. If we want a shot at winning some of these tough games down the stretch of the season, right, we're going to need those guys back. And unfortunate news has come out that Barnes, Trent, and Precious remain questionable for tomorrow's game against Washington. Now, Scotty Barnes, as we discussed in a recent video, right, his x-rays came back negative. Gary Trent Jr., Precious Achiuwa, they still remain day-to-day. Right, we're not sure when they're going to be back into the lineup, but questionable is, I've brought it up on many videos, right? You have your doubtful, your questionable, then probable. They usually go through that stint in terms of players actually playing, getting on the court. So we're waiting for that questionable to turn probable for some of our star guys to sort of come back into the roster. Now, Washington, we lost one game to them. We beat them one game in the recent 2-game series we had versus the Wizards, and they're a team that's right on our tails in sort of the play-in race. Now, they've been losing a lot of games, and Bradley Beal's kind of been sitting. I'm not sure if it's true injuries, but he's been out of the lineup a little bit. So hopefully the Raptors, regardless of the players that are playing, will be able to get a dub versus Washington, because even if they're not a big threat, because the Chicago Bulls are a little bit ahead of them in the standings right now, right? We need to sort of get every single win we can possibly get, and we're chasing those Atlanta Hawks because we only want to win one game to get out of the play-in, and I think Brooklyn is very beatable, or the Hawks, whoever we end up playing against. So, hopefully the Raptors are able to get a W there, but let's talk about the game that we've been sort of alluding to and discussing roundabout, because honestly, probably the most boring game of the season. I'm happy we got the win, right? If we lost, then it'd be more fiery, there'd be more frustration, and we'd be rotted. We'd have another Raptors therapy session. But no, Toronto Raptors, from start to finish, were able to really, get a big W. Get a W, even if it was against a tanking Pistons team, even if the Pistons didn't show that much life, right? The Raptors got a W, so we can be happy about that. Looking at the box score for the team, right? Pascal's Dwane Casey mentioned, right? 38 minutes still in a game against the Pistons. No one else played over 30, but interesting that, we refused to play Thad last night, and Pascal still had 38 minutes, but 32 points, 9 assists, 5 rebounds. He's broken out of his slump, 12 of 19 from the field. 2 of 6 from the three-point line, but remarkable game for Pascal. Fred took a lot of shots, wasn't that efficient, but 18 points for Fred VanVleet. Had 4 assists, and weird enough, just wasn't throwing the ball. I know the Pistons have some big men, they have some guys out there that perform well, do their thing and all that, right? Like, you look at the, James Wiseman's playing well, right? Marvin Bagley off the bench, or he started. They didn't play too much together. They have some bigs out there that Pirtle has his hands full with, and all that sort of stuff. But for Pirtle to only take 2 shots in this game, Fred VanVleet to take 16, especially with how good Pirtle has been as of late. He's a plus 24 for the game and stuff. Second highest on the team for Yak. But we need some more shots for big Jakob Poeltl. That's one take there. And if you see it from the box score, because I don't know if everyone watched this game. Got to cover it all and all that sort of stuff. We had a snowstorm last night, so I couldn't go live here on the East Coast, as has been the case for a lot of these games for this season. But Will Barton got the start once again. 3 of 10 from the field, 1 of 4 from the three-point line. Probably his best game as a Raptor, but again, it's coming against the Detroit Pistons, and you're still going 3 of 10 from the field. Your three-point sniper, your three-point shooter, only getting 1 of 4 from the three-point line. We need some better performances from Will Barton. OG was great, 17 points, played great defense. Didn't need that much more out of him. Koloko did his thing off the bench, played decent defense. Malachi, 1 for 8 from the field. Again, he's shooting himself in the foot because he's getting these opportunities. He had a decent game the other night against the Pacers, and then just dropping a stinker like this is unfortunate for him. And Chris Boucher was remarkable off the bench, 7-14, knocked down his threes, a couple threes, which was nice, but 19 and 13, no complaints there, 2 blocks, great to see. But the final player that I just really want to sink my teeth into, and I know Flynn had a good game against the Pacers, but Jeff Dwane needs to be our backup point guard. We need to find a way so the two-way, I don't know how many games he has left in regards to his two-way sort of status and all that, but Jeff Dwane, if we want a chance in the play-in and make a push in the playoffs, if we do, right, he needs to be our backup point guard. He's better than Delano right now. He's better than Flynn right now. He's polished. He can shoot. He can score the lane. He facilitates for others, right? Last night, 9 points, 4 assists, 3 rebounds, 3 of 7 from the field. I just love what Jeff Dwane brings to the table, and he needs to be a mainstay in the rotation. So hopefully Nick Nurse can find a way, Masai Ujiri, that he's going to be in the rotation and able to play to close out the season. So shout out to Jeff Dwane for playing well. Final thing we're talking about in this game, or in today's news, the Raptors 905 playoff streak ended, and Blake Murphy came out, basically said the Raptors 905 have officially been eliminated from the playoffs due to the out-of-town scoreboards. The G League's longest playoff streak is over. So, my not a big 905 follower. I've admitted that many times in the podcast, but since we got rid of Reggie Perry, haven't followed the team whatsoever. And you trade away Reggie Perry like that, a guy that I thought should have had a chance of making the Toronto Raptors roster. I guess the 6'9" vision is dead. We got rid of Perry, and we don't make the Raptors 905 playoffs. So, fortunate stuff there. But folks, you guys are the best to make this far. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. Appreciate you guys as always. Anyways, I'm signing out. Cheers.